Hey team, this is Devin and Sam Zilmer, and we're out of the Milwaukee area at the moment. We're actually coached and mentored by Michael and Kelsey Beaupre, and engineers by background. But we're excited today just to share a little bit of our journey and some thought process about learning how to network and starting to build a habit. And the mindset you want to have as you start to network is that likely, if you're coming to this environment, you probably haven't evaluated talent and built a team before. You haven't learned the skill set of evaluating and bringing on new partners. We didn't have this from our background professionally. We're both engineers. We're both introverts, so we didn't have a skill set like this. But why do we start a habit? Just like a basketball player goes in and starts a lot of shoots free throws every day, they need to develop a habit so that they can become competent and skillful in the work that they do. It's the same thing in our environment. We need to start a habit and we need to be consistent with it because it allows us to work on the nuances and get really, really good and master a skill.
And the way that you develop results in terms of networking is that you develop a skill set along with a work habit. And this is where, starting to be consistent in terms of networking becomes so important. And so the number one recommendation that we have when you want to develop a networking habit is that you have to commit to a daily work habit, to a daily standard. Because what that will do, your work habit will then dictate the speed at which you will develop your skill set. So when you've developed a skill set, no one can ever take that away from you. So once you've developed that and you have full control over your work habit, that's when then you can start to expect to create results in terms of networking and vetting out partnerships and things like that.
Yeah, the most important thing in this phase is to have a learner's mentality. Right. Now, here's what I mean by that. You cannot expect to create results in something you have not mastered. And if you do, that's where we see held us back. We felt frustrated at times. But once we let go of the expectation, we say, hey, we're going to learn. Right. And with our coaches and really tuning into mentorship and developing a skill, we could eventually get to a point where we can become predictable. And that's ultimately what we want to do. Just like any other professional athlete becomes predictable in the results they create, it's because they went through the training process. And what you need to do in this phase is have a lot of, have faith in the training process, lean into mentorship, and then trust and do the work consistently because it'll enable you to develop the skill.
And this is a time where you should be able to maximize your coach as much as possible so that you can ultimately download their thought process on how they think about networking and building that skill set so that eventually you can duplicate not what they do specifically, but their mindset and how they think about having these conversations. And when you're developing this habit, this is the perfect time to be able to maximize that and to maximize your learning. And then a few actionable items as you are prepping yourself to get into a 90-day core run. So a 90-day core run is where you're at a minimum sharing your story, making someone aware of what's available at least one time a day, average seven times a week. And by committing to doing this is you're then developing the habit and the skill set so that you can ultimately create results. And your confidence is going to grow tremendously when you follow through on what you tell yourself you're going to do by taking action. And that action is by being able to share your story no matter what type of day that you had. Maybe it's later at night and you forgot to share it, or you had some life stuff that pop up. But when you can go out and, really encourage yourself and to put yourself in a position to get out of your comfort zone, to share your story every single day, that is when you're going to grow the most confidence. And that's where that habit will start to become part of who you are. And that no longer have to take as much thought in order to achieve that action.
Yeah, and such a good point by Sam, because at the end of the day, right, we get really good and confident things we just do often. The more you do it, the better also it will come off and the more confidence you'll convey and more people will be like, oh, I want to do what that guy does and I want to learn how to do that, right? I want to meet your coach because you actually believe you know where you're going, but you get there by doing a lot of reps, right? And that's the beauty in that process. A couple tips and from our end and thoughts that held us back was that we needn't really get our schedule and our time aligned to do this in the initial stages because we are adding something new into our life. And one thing we've operated on and we've used in our business is we built business hours into our schedule so that we can consistently go execute on this. So every day, we have a time slot in our calendar that is devoted to doing this type of activity, sharing our story, so that we can be consistent in our business. And it is a non-negotiable in our schedule, meaning that nothing else will trump that type of activity, because that is so key to us actually growing our company. It's a KPI, right? Key performance indicator.
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it's a decision if you want to commit to a 90-day core run. Now, of course, if you have a zero networking habit at the moment, maybe we wouldn't recommend jumping right into a 90-day core run. But if you're in some sort of cadence in terms of networking, just choosing to commit to, pushing yourself to get out of your comfort zone to make these daily standards happen is just ultimately a choice and a commitment on your end.
Yeah. And just go and talk to your coach, right? If you feel like, hey, am I really ready for one? Just go talk to your coach. One thing we've done is people we coach is giving them a 2-week run and just going after it for 2 weeks and seeing what it feels like and really putting on the afterburners. And what we found is a lot of people realize oh, this really wasn't as big a deal as I made it out to be in my brain. And then they actually followed through on a full 90-day and started actually creating results in their business on their own, which is really, really exciting. Because once you own that, you own the ability to go scale a company, which is the most exciting thing. The thing that we were after in this space was to be able to dictate the results we wanted to create. One last tip for me, and then you can add anything else you want to share here. But I just believe that one of the things that held us back as well is learning how to have grace with standards in the process. What does this mean? It means that you probably won't be perfect in a 90-day run. The goal is perfection, but there might be life or things that come up that you just didn't intend for. Now, your goal is still to follow through on these days and stay to your minimum standard. And that's one thing we just have in our business is that even on the craziest days, what can we follow through on to keep the ball moving down the field? But we also have grace with ourselves because we understand that those days are going to happen. And we don't let it affect us mentally because we understand that's just life, but we still keep the ball moving down the field.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the last thing I just want to share too is should be an extremely exciting period in your business journey. It's I just remember when we started networking, when we started to be able to make introductions to our coach, and while we started to run our own meet and greets, this was some of the most fun times in our business where we were actually felt like we were truly growing and learning and developing a skill set so that we could eventually expand our business, so we could start to build out a team of partnerships and things like that. And so don't forget to make sure you're having fun throughout this journey. Lean into learning as much as you can through this process. And with that, I think that's all we got for sharing and tips on a 90-day core run.